Good morning and welcome to the Jury Insight Panel for Graphic and Type Design. I'm Amarose Abrams and I am hosting today a wonderful panel of guests: Tyrone Ohia, Rosie Trickett, Andy Ramat, Sulekha Rajkumar and Liron Lavi Turkanich. Thank you so much for joining me today. I think now we're going to run through the chosen projects of our jury members. So starting with Andy's chosen project, could you please play the slides? Would you like to introduce Adlam for us?
I think Adlam project is very contextual because the project when the community don't have own typeface and have typeface to apply to the digital computer and Adlam project I think is so amazing for this time when they connect the culture and the digital era for right now, because I'm from Indonesia. For the cases, it's very many cases likes the community in my country. Because the internet era come to very late. I think typography so many helpful to community.
Absolutely. And could you take us through some of the key elements of Adlam?
And the element come from the I think on original mereka. Their originality, I think very important for now because I think this time for some people no reference come from many because internet come so I so hard to found original for this time so the same all because internet open more and more.
Yes.
I think Adlam project is not only the visual because the relevant to the market. I think to the society in.
Yeah. Okay. That's wonderful. And if we could now play Liron's Choice, that would be fantastic. Thank you, Andy. Here you go. So what spoke to you particularly about this project?
Hi everyone. So we saw so many projects and so many typefaces, and this one really stood out because it was interactive in its full sense, and it also works. We tried that when we were doing the judging, so we started speaking and seeing what comes up, and I think that it doesn't only talk about design, but it overlays more medias like using sound and audio as one of the axes that you can choose. So really interactive. It's also fun. And I think it's a really nice starting point to see what will, it's also inspiring to see what will come out of it. More interesting stuff.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you so much. And if we could move on to Rosie's project, this is How to Quit.
The opioid crisis isn't even close to coming to an end.
Every 6 minutes, someone dies from an overdose.
People have simply been prescribed something that kills them.
I liked the feeling of not feeling.
I lost friends, family, everything.
I tried to quit so many times, but
then you have a pill in your hand and it's impossible.
855 How to Quit is a helpline that uses opioid pill imprint codes as extensions to connect those who struggle
Hello?
with those who managed to quit.
I'm David, and I quit hydros.
My name is Brenda, and what worked for me was medication-assisted treatment.
And I feel you. We're all in this, so let's help each other out.
So I chose this project because I think it's a piece of really brilliant creative thinking.
Yeah.
At taking the problem, the opioid pill itself, and turning that into the solution, just felt like such a clever thing to do. And it has such impact across so many levels. So I've lost my voice a bit from the judging, did a lot of talking. But yeah, it works on every level. Like in billboards, it has such huge impact. And then in animation, it's lovely the way it's cycling through these pills. When you get to the website, there's little details, like in the menu, there's a pill that when you click on it, you get these other different shapes of pill. And then you start to see the stories of people. So you get each different pill, and then it tells the story of someone who was addicted to that pill. And I think it's just that thing of, if somebody was addicted to a specific type of pill, the fact that that code is what can connect them to the story of someone who quit that exact same thing. It's going to give them the kind of empowering sense that they can actually do something about it. So it felt like it really does something quite impactful. And I thought it was interesting as well that the opioid crisis is really quite a uniquely American problem. And I feel like this is a uniquely American solution. Like, this wouldn't work in the UK because telephone codes don't work in this way. You can't type in letters. It just wouldn't work. But in America, it feels perfect. Like, to have that in neighborhoods, it's like an easy thing to remember. People have the pill in their hands, so there's not too much of a barrier to be able to actually use it. So for me, this was one that, you know, some projects are a bit more of a slow burn, and you see them, you have to kind of think about them, really talk about them with other people, and then start seeing what was good about them. This was one that just straight away made me sit up and take notice. I couldn't ignore this project.
That's amazing, thank you. And now, if we could have Sulekha's slide up, please. Video.
Yeah, this project, someone on the panel spoke about how sometimes you come across a project and you instantly feel jealous that you didn't do it. This one was one of them. And the reason is actually this paper cut style. So it's a typeface that simulates the idea of, like paper tape lettering. This style is actually quite ubiquitous. It's all over, but it takes time to do. And to have it, perhaps there was like this gap that hadn't been done in typeface before. And sometimes you look at it and it's like, oh, how come no one did it so far? But what is really interesting, and I think what I liked it is, there is this technology called color font technology. And you see a lot of typefaces that have come out, but this one I thought used it very cleverly, because the typeface actually allows you to have transparencies in it. And so even if you change your color, you can change it as you would choose, but it provides you many options as well to build it. And one thing I noticed, actually a trend across quite a few entries in type design this time, was this idea of bringing tactility to the digital world. We have very sophisticated softwares these days, and you get very precise lines. Please excuse me, I've completely lost my voice in this weather. And sometimes I feel like with all that precision, you have ready templates, you have color palettes that have already been predetermined. Everything looks sophisticated, but very uninteresting. And somewhere you're missing that quality to connect with it. And I think the designers over here intended to be a typeface that could be used for protest. But even if it isn't used for that, even if it just brings that sensory experience to design in a way that can be rolled out very quickly through type, and that's one of the reasons I absolutely love this piece of work.
Thank you. And Tyrone, if we could have Tyrone's choice up, that would be fantastic.
Founded in Quebec, Canada in 1959, LCI Education is a global network of 23 campuses in higher education, recognized for its collaborative fashion programs. With time, the brand has evolved to showcase the complete fields of study and campuses. Its global expansion led to the creation of a headquarters close to its roots in the Canadian countryside. A sugar shack named Tissé Serré, tightly knit in French. It aims to bring its international community together to forge a shared vision of the school of tomorrow. This mission was symbolized through a flag in the form of a quilt with multiple layers of fabric coming together to symbolize LCI's core values of creativity, collaboration, and diversity. These quilts, handmade using upcycled fabrics, were then assembled with a decorative seam called top stitching. A custom maple leaf shape infused Canadian flavor directly into the design, showing how LCI's roots stitch together everyone's values and perspectives. Today, these quilts can be found all over the space, flags reminding us that collaboration is at the heart of our mission and the school of tomorrow.
Yeah, hey guys. For context, those quilts were entered into applied print graphics and graphic design. And yeah, for me personally, I mean, I've got a design studio in New Zealand, and we do a lot of indigenous design work where we take, you know, kind of modern design aspects and combine them with indigenous ways of crafting or thinking. And so, you know, any project like this sort of really speaks to me, where there's, you know, a modern identity. It's created on the computer. It's got all of these practical tasks that it needs to do. But, you know, through an indigenous lens, you get to push it further by bringing in, you know, these kind of quilting and other types of weaving traditions, and then colliding them with a contemporary design language to create something new. So yeah, I just love how you get this interplay of traditional history, indigenous ways of doing things, but you also get something new because you know, these patterns are very contemporary, and so you get these two worlds talking to each other back and forth. And yeah, it's this stuff that sort of excites me really. So it's a personal choice from me. Yeah, cheers.
Thank you so much. That brings me on to a thought, because I was thinking about, in terms of graphics and type, like how it works in terms of the intersection of craft and tech. Like, how does that work for all of you in your day-to-day kind of projects, and how much involvement is there really? Because everyone talks about the ever-present, you know, threat of AI, but or not. But I'm wondering how it works. Is it a positive thing? Is it a negative thing? Or is it something that you just see as another tool in your toolkit?
You know, this debate about technology and creativity, also creativity or craft, whether it ought to be there or not, it is there. It just is. And I think it's at this point that we can either embrace it, or we can, you know, let ourselves be isolated from the conversation. What I do think there's still a lot, in fact, something I noticed across all these 5 projects was this idea of connection. And each of them has this, either to connect through a sensory experience, through conversation, through graphics, you know, weaving. And even with the kind of technology we have today and the ability to, you know, we don't necessarily have to meet people also to connect, but we still want to. So I think that we haven't, while the technology enables us to do so much more, I believe that it might just take care of all the stuff for us to think bigger, and maybe think of maybe like humanity in a sense, and what design can do for that.
Yes.
Rather than focus on, like, I think a lot of technology can handle some of the things that maybe experts would do back in the day. And this has happened all the time. Like, there have been professions that have gotten redundant because of the introduction of a new technology, and ours will be no different. And of course, sometimes I'm sad about that, but it's an opportunity to explore something that we don't even know yet.
Yeah.
I can add to that I think that right now I've been seeing a trend that, you know, with variable fonts there is unlimited opportunities. So the technology is there, and now, after seeing for the past couple of years a lot of like very technical typefaces that are, you know, well crafted and very suited to the technology, it's really I think it's really obvious that this year we've been seeing a lot more craft or randomness inserted, like more humanity in the entries themselves. So you have the technology to cater that, for instance, more randomness, or even the transparency, like going back to tactile, or using, you know, kids and audio. So just using the technology for inserting more randomness, more quirkiness even, and that just shows that there are so many options even beyond the, you know, the perfect techie sans serif type that we see all around.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it feels like it's nothing to be afraid of, because it's just something we need to use, and it can make a lot of processes a lot easier and allow us to focus on really being creative and doing something new with it. Like Dentsu did an amazing talk yesterday about humanity in AI, and it's just the possibilities are endless. So I think it's a really exciting new tool.
Wonderful. Yeah, I'm excited to see what comes out of it. And I just
May I add something on the AI bit, please?
Yes.
What is interesting about AI is that it can only work with what content it's fed into, right? And most of the work that is documented is from majority voices. So there is still a lot of work, you know, whether it's cultural, from regions that is not documented. So even if it's something as simple as aesthetics, right? Say images. Now you have, you know, technology that can create images, but they can only create images from what they have, like what images they have in their repository. And if you don't have images from parts of the world that haven't been translated to that digital format, that cannot be created. So there's still a lot more work to be done.
100%. Yeah. And that takes me on to something that we had an earlier discussion that we discussed earlier, which was talking about the globally diverse range of entrants that you had this year, and that that was an increase on previous years. And kind of how did that impact the judging, and how did it impact the judging to be looking at projects from cultures and contexts that you maybe didn't know so well?
I think it was interesting in terms of graphic design, because sometimes there are things where you look at it and it's really beautiful, and you're seeing these like Japanese characters that look amazing, and it's like, oh yeah, that looks great. And then actually, we had a couple of people on our jury who could read Japanese, and they're like, yeah, it's actually a bit of a stretch to be kind of forcing that shape to be that part of the character. I don't quite read it. I think they're trying to say this, but it doesn't quite work. And I wouldn't know that. So I think it's really important to have a big cross-section of people on the jury panels, so that we can pick up on these local things.
Yeah, so the diversity in the room should match the diversity of the projects you're judging.
Totally.
Yeah.
And I think maybe just to add to that, it's fascinating seeing, or being exposed to the different ways that different cultures think about beauty, or think about like what a good concept is, and things like that as well. And so there was a lot of that where we're looking at work that, there's stuff that I wouldn't necessarily think to do, or it might be really quiet, or it might be too bold or too loud for me, and things like that. But it's the sort of cultural context. It's just great to see it, to see like so many different types of beauty and so many different types of ways of getting to an idea through different cultural lenses.
Yeah, and it was really important to hear different perspectives on that.
Yeah.
It's very different from when you're on your own doing the online judging, and then suddenly hearing what other people thought about things. Just you see things in a new light, and it really opened things up.
That's really interesting. And then I want to come back to a point that you just made, which is looking at type and design in a language that maybe you can't read, what that's like, and how you navigate that in the judging process.
I think you need to be very humble, and not get blinded by how beautiful it looks or just the forms. I think it's something that every type designer on the jury could evaluate for sure, if the curves are right, if the spacing looks okay, but above that, there needs to be this sense of humbleness that I'm not aware of the context. So this is why exactly it's really valuable to have a jury that is across the globe, and even call in some people from other juries that could help and give that context. And also the brief. The brief that the people who put the entries in, they write is also quite valuable for that.
Okay, that's wonderful. And Sulekha, you mentioned earlier about certain scripts that maybe had not been turned into type yet. Yeah. And I wondered if you could speak to that.
Yeah, there was another project which I found very outstanding, which is a typeface designed for the script called Ranjana, which is a script from Nepal. I think it's a 12th century script that and was used to write a lot of Buddhist and Hindu religious texts, but it is still used currently in Nepal as well. But it doesn't have a digital typeface, and in fact, it doesn't even have a Unicode. I mean, that's how it's been forgotten. And one of the reasons, perhaps, is there is a proposal out there, and everyone's hoping that it goes through. But the script has about 750 very complex conjuncts. So the characters, I think, if I'm remembering from that text, was over 900 or something like that. It's quite a daunting task to attempt. And your only research when you're, to design a typeface in the digital world would be looking at manuscripts, inscriptions, maybe signages that were done earlier. Some are hand-painted, some have, I think there may have been some type. I'm not very sure about that part, but definitely not in the digital sense and in the contemporary way that we use it and see it. So it requires a lot of hard work and very robust research, and a lot of people don't do it. Yeah. So this project actually, sort of shed light on that and did it very well. And one thing I particularly liked about it is sometimes when a subject is attempted for the first time, it usually is a stepping stone, and then someone can look upon it and build it. This project already is extremely well crafted, extremely detailed, very well thought through. So I would say instead of starting at step one, they're already way up high. The next person who designs the next typeface in this is going to have to really think out of the box or have a very critical lens on. Yeah.
Just on that, we've done a few books in our studio where we've had to work with some indigenous Fijian languages and some Rarotongan languages, and there we worked with a Rotuma poet from Fiji, and just thinking about typefaces as a tool, there were so many little punctuation marks that weren't in any of the typefaces that we needed to do the book, and so it was maybe 100 pages or so, but it probably the typesetting ended up taking maybe 6 times longer than it would to typeset an English book, just because of these kind of compatibility issues. Yeah, it's fascinating. So that project sounds awesome, the way that it's just opening it up for people.
And I wondered kind of also if there were any regions that have done particularly well, kind of to your mind, as you've been going through all these entrants. There's a huge amount of entrants that you have to go through. And I imagine things come out in the kind of discussions. And so in addition to what we've spoken about, I was wondering if there had been kind of anything, any kind of regions in the world that perhaps have sprung out of being completely, having some new ideas or doing particularly good work at the moment.
I feel like there's pockets in different areas.
Yeah.
For a while there's been in graphic and book design, some of the Chinese designers and some of the books they're designing these days are just incredible. They're so intricate, and they just, from the outside, it looks like they're thinking about books in such a different way than we think about, a standard book with a cover and then inside pages and stuff like that. they're like, some of them are like mazes where you're just having to kind of interact and go through all of these different fold-outs and things like that, and then the production qualities are just insane, with that sort of print manufacturing background that they have in China. So I think that's really exciting to see all that stuff coming out, and it doesn't feel like it could come out of any other country. Like I haven't seen it come out of any other country. It sort of seems so like it's only coming out of China in that sense, as some sort of style or thing. For me, like with posters, I think, the UK and Europe, just the posters are always so awesome with such a strong history of poster design. I think that really struck me. Coming from New Zealand, design's quite a lot younger there. But you get these incredible histories of poster design in this part of the world. Yeah.
Yeah, the poster design was great. That was definitely my favourite category to judge.
That was a subcategory?
Yeah, it's a subcategory of graphic design, and it's just everything in this one application. So you either get it right or you don't. And it's just the ones that work, they're like, oh. You just look at them and you're like, oh, I wish I did that. And they can carry so much emotion and tell so much of a story in just this single image. So yeah, a successful poster for me is just the best.
And so I feel like they're kind of coming back a little bit, like you didn't see them for a while. And now I feel like just walking through London, there are a lot of posters, fly posters, campaigns, and that kind of more stuff that's kind of communicating from the street.
Yeah, and it was nice to see it was such a big category within it. Graphic design was a really big category. We had nearly 600 entries, but over 100 of them were posters. So posters was big, like very, very big, and it was very mixed. Don't get me wrong, they were not all amazing posters, but it was great to see that there were so many. Like they were so many were just like so well crafted, and so, like other ones have just this amazing idea, and then sometimes you get the holy grail or you get both, and that's when it's pencil.
To continue what you said about poster and just having one opportunity to present, I think in typefaces it can be a bit harder because you eventually have a font file, and so I was thinking about the trends and what you were asking, and I think that this year there was so much emphasis on how the people who entered the work, how they communicate the typeface. You've got almost an infinite file that you have to find how to present in a graphic design matter. This year we've been seeing some amazing videos, some amazing type in motion, because actually the designer has an opportunity to present the typeface however she or he would like. Endless possibilities, and this is where like hardcore design communication comes in. What you choose to highlight, like the washi tape project, for instance, they showed during the video, they showed so many options, and it was so quick, and you saw the rhythm, and we got excited, like we want to try that. So just like as a little teaser for what could happen when you really open the font file later.
Yeah. I feel like it's quite exciting to see these ideas which kind of transcend the medium. So they look great on an Instagram tile, they look great on the wall, they look great, in all these different, they look great on TikTok, they look great on all these different kind of formats. They can move, they can be static. And it feels like it's kind of opening up the whole kind of medium into kind of, in a different way, perhaps.
Yeah, I think the best projects do something different with each different medium. Because I think the danger of that is you just plaster the same thing across everything.
Yeah.
And then you get sick of it and you're just like, well, so what? But the best ones really make the most of that medium and do something special with it. That's when you really notice it.
Yeah. It's wonderful.
For my category in typography, so many participants to try to experiment, try to search something new, but only beautiful, only experimenting, but don't have impact, I think, because only apply to the screen or the program. So hard for me to find a good one because the same, always the same for this time. For example, typography in website, but I see too much experiment. I think because the user don't have the function. But sometimes I found it's good one. Sometimes, but so many try to be something search to something new, but don't have quality. I think for me.
So they're kind of forgetting about the viewer in a way, forgetting about the person that's got to read it, and getting more kind of into the experimental side. Yeah, I think you've got to remember that.
Yeah, and some things just kind of forget the purpose. Like I've seen a lot of things that are like they're very beautiful, but there's no real concept behind it, and there's no real kind of just want to know why.
Yeah.
Like, what for? Because otherwise it just becomes a bit hollow, and you're just like, well, it looks nice, but so what? Like, just needs a bit more depth.
Yeah, depth is always important. That brings me to a question I wanted to ask all of you, which is what for you really makes a D&AD worthy design, a D&AD worthy project? You've been looking at so much. I feel like maybe a slightly cruel question after looking at so many different things, but like after coming out of the process, what do you think is that kind of magical mystery X that makes a great project? We can go this way, we could start with Tyrone.
Yeah, sure. I feel like there's quite there's such, it's so, firstly I think it's so contextual, you know, so for like posters, I think it can just be, it can just communicate and use the principles of graphic design so well. You know, we saw posters for all different types of purposes and causes. It wasn't necessarily like the cause or the purpose for the poster made it good. It was a bit more pure in that sense, in my opinion. It was about just how designers were actually laying things out and using visual language to evoke emotion. So you know, that's an example of how I think you can do really well in the poster category. You know, the opioids one is a classic where the actual cause, the cause of the or the cause for the project and the client's cause becomes quite a big compelling part of the overall design. Yes, the design still has to be great, but you can't help but get swept up in what it's actually for because it's doing something really good for the world. So I think there's, you know, in that sense, you're looking at, you're needing a wider magic of like a certain type of project that the world needs to be created or needs to be, you know, birthed through design or whatever it is. Yeah, what else? I think, yeah, I feel like that project in particular was, it's also, you know, it's just got to be so crafted as well, I think, and so you can't forget that. It's just so multifaceted, I guess, as well. I'm trying to get it, and some things, like, they're timed really well, you know, like the world might be really excited about a thing right now that elevates it further than something else that could be just as good, and so there's all of these. Yeah, I like to think of it as being so interwoven, design being so interwoven into the world, that all of these other zeitgeists and things that are happening help to elevate it. But then clarity, like the opioids one is just like, there's a clarity there. You look at it in a 1 second or less than a second and you're like, I know what that's about. And I've gotten the idea, I've gotten the aesthetic, I've gotten the whole problem, and I've gotten the solution all in one sort of second, you know. So I think when you're going through like 600 entries, clarity plays a huge part in, and just sorting the good from the
it
from
stands
the
out.
Yeah.
With type design, it's quite interesting because when you design typefaces, it's also the end result, and it's also an ingredient for further design. So when you know, the three parameters, the broad ones that we had to consider was, is it a strong idea, is it brilliantly executed, and is it fit for purpose? Now, what is an idea when it comes to type? What does execution mean when it comes to type? So execution, for example, can mean well-crafted curves. But it can also mean, like, for example, I'll give an example of variable font technology, which allows you to create a lot of variations in the type. And in that case, if it isn't easy to use, or if it doesn't really create that, it doesn't have that experience, then it really isn't fit for purpose. Yeah. So I like to keep the lens also when it comes to typeface design is how is it received by graphic designers as well? Because is it something that can take forward, that can be taken forward? Sometimes, you know, a typeface can be sort of a study as well to really push the boundaries of letter forms, and there is a space for that. So that is also one category in terms of what you would count as brilliantly executed. Yes. And then there's the other aspect of it, whether does it have a purpose, and is that purpose fulfilled? Is it accessible to people if the intention is that? So for example, if there are typefaces that have an activism quality to it, is that typeface actually accessible to people or not? Yeah. You know, so these are things that I think the ones that, like you said, the ones that check all the boxes, they're crystal clear. You just know that this one has been very well thought through.
Yeah, I think those three parameters that we had to look to judge were incredibly useful, because particularly going through so many entries, it's like there's a surprising amount that really fall down on one. Like, and it's sad. It's sad. It was devastating to see these brilliant ideas, and then you're just like, oh, like, it's just such a shame when it's just not executed well, and it's like it could have been amazing. And then on the other side of that, you get something that's really beautiful, but just doesn't connect emotionally because there's not really any reason for it, and it feels just a bit decorative. So it's kind of that combination of those two feels really important. Like, as Tyrone knows, I had a really quite intense color coding sticker system in my notebook, which was a bit mad, but I left the yellow ones for the ones that really did everything for me. And you know, like that whittled it down a lot. Like it was you know, like it's not a given that all these things are covered at all.
That's interesting.
Yeah. I will have to say that for type, it of course needs to be excellently crafted, really excellently crafted, but I would say that the thing that really stands out is when it's intelligently rich. So above the perfectly executed design, the craft itself, there needs to be either a very strong, meaningful concept, or something new, or something that uses other disciplines. And it can be either botanics or sound or whichever. And then when it gets layered, you can really sense what are the outstanding projects. Not just, you know, intellectually, but we can also feel it. It was very obvious when, you know, heart started beating faster when there was a really rich project in front of us. Yeah.
That's wonderful.
For me in typography, I think context is very important because some country like China, Japan, or Southeast Asia have not alphabet but have a local typography, and for some example in my country, so have a lot of local typeface, but because the language now don't and use for now, because my country is one language, bahasa Indonesia. I think for context is very important. Yes. And then the function is only important. Function why the typography create like style, design style, because the history of typography is so long time ago, like Bauhaus, Justice Sol, Emil Ruder, and so many legendary typographer. And now I think so long time ago printed matter is very important, but now so many many medium to apply a typography. More have a system and more easy to understand to the target. But back to the market, the target market, and then well-crafted, applicable, and more system, I think, and more applicable to relevant the purpose. I think.
Yeah, 100. Yeah. So it seems like it's all those essential ingredients, making something really beautiful, making something very effective, and then making it fit for purpose, making it connect, I guess, seem like the key elements of what would be a D&AD worthy project. Yeah.
I think actually one of the things that is important is to really remember the descriptions and the brief, like the write-up. Some entries like live or die on the write-up because you do actually need that context, and they're not written in the clearest way, and it's just like, oh, I don't quite understand. I feel like this could be brilliant, but I don't understand. I don't know quite what they're trying to say. So I think it's really important, and I think maybe that's a bit of an afterthought sometimes, it felt like.
I think also there's every now and then, like, there's just an aspect to a job that's kind of like magic. There's like another factor, like some sort of X factor, like, you know, as designers, we've got to be rational, we've got to sort of be, you know, driven by the metrics of what we need to do and hit these things, but then sometimes it's just like magic as well. I don't know how to explain it, you know what I mean? You just see something and it's just, whoa, amazing. It does all the other stuff, but then it has this other thing as well. Might be in the way that it's executed or photographed or typeset or, pulling on different kind of cultural styles or aesthetics, but yeah, every now and then you get something like that and you're just like, whoa, you know, you couldn't think of it, but it's there, and then, that stuff is just great. So you guys should do some of that stuff.
Yeah, the magical mystery X, if we all knew what it was. But I was wondering, we just have about 5 minutes left now, so I wanted to open out to the audience and see if anyone has any questions for our panel. Or comments.
There's one.
Oh, okay. I saw a poster which I absolutely fell in love with. So it's a poster which it's a film about motherhood, and it's got a woman who's kind of been sort of erased here. You can only see her head, you can't see her body. Then in place of where her body was, there's this kind of childlike scrawl, like this careless childlike scrawl that's just been kind of imprinted over her, taking away her identity. And it just, as soon as I saw it, it was just so beautiful and so emotional, and just said everything in this one image that I was just like, I love this. And that was a really good example of being able to really have these debates about things, because we are looking at 600 entries.
Yeah.
And when it got to the first shortlist, it wasn't there, and I was like, oh my God, was I wrong? But then I got it out because I was just like, okay, I just want to talk about this poster and what I saw in it, what it meant to me, and just show it to people. And I think it's one of those things where sometimes things are a little bit quieter, and you don't notice them straight away. So I think it needed that bit of extra time. And actually, people started to really respond to it, and even like the next day, the second day of judging, people were like, oh, I've really been thinking about that poster. Like, it's really got under my skin. So I think, yeah, sometimes you just need to give things a bit of time. But it's an amazing poster. Yeah. Oh, it's called If You're Happy.
Oh.
So if you want to look it up.
It's a great name.
So also the name, yeah.
Does anyone else have any questions or comments? Could you speak up, please? Talking about the balance between legibility and creativity, and how you found that balance in the judging process.
It's a brilliant question, because it's not apples to apples. And we also have to judge subcategories that these categories, they either get a wood pencil or even higher, but they're still, I mean, it's the same result, right, if you get that award. It's a really good question. I think every piece of work needs to be judged on its own to begin with. So at the beginning, it's not reflected, you know, in what you think about the others. And then once, so your color coding system did make a lot of sense to me, because it's the kind of thing that you do one more step, and then at some point when it gets quite high, you know that it needs to tick many boxes, and many of these boxes are the same at some point. Like after you got done with legibility, or with perfect curves, or with, I don't know, script coverage, then you get it up to a higher level. At the end, it's creative excellence, right? That's where it's at the top.
Wonderful. And any more questions before we finish? Hi.
You started saying about the projects that you try to find some projects that get your heart beating faster and stuff like that. And later you added context to that, like you need some explanations in order to understand where it falls and stuff. Is there a sweet spot that the project speaks for itself and the project that needs some explanation?
I think sometimes we had to give entries the benefit of the doubt a bit, because I think it does come down to cultural context. And that's including in the write-up, because sometimes things get a bit lost in translation, I think. So while there are some which have immediate impact, and you just get it straight away, there are other ones where you do need to kind of interrogate it a bit more, and I think it was just important to give everything the time it deserved, like really feel the responsibility of judging these entries, because I've entered things in D&AD myself, and I know how much work goes into the entry, so I wanted to give everything the same amount of time and really, really get under the skin of it and understand what it's about. And I think that's just as valid sometimes as instantly getting it, because the context is so important.
Yeah, and the context also sort of prepares you to receive that work, you know, it lays the foundation, because especially think about the judges when they're looking at 600 entries and they're jumping from subject to subject. You want to you put your best foot forward. So setting that stage, once you read it, you're already now immersed in that time, or if it's either it's temporal or it's an actual region, and you're there. And then when you view the work, then I think then it rests on the work to have that kind of impact and power. Can it speak for itself? At that point, it can. But I think the cultural context is very crucial, because you don't always have people in the room who are familiar with that setup. So a good write-up, or you know, well-explained boards can really help sell your work. But not over, like we had some very odd slides and type where, you know, they were highly over-intellectualized and said really nothing, and any type designer can see through it, and in fact that works against the project. We try to not focus on that when we finally judge, but even if it's a simple idea, just communicating that, setting that stage so that the work can then speak for itself is, I think, quite crucial.
Well, thank you so much, my wonderful panel. Andy, Laurent, Rosie, Sulekha, Tyrone, thank you so much for your insights. That's been wonderful. Thank you.